Maryland football's ceiling is a Big Ten title.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys all for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Have your cake and drink it too. Birthday cake flavor is back. No fork needed, vanilla Y cakey flavor, caffeinated kick, and no sugar. It's party time. Order now at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Maryland's ceiling next year in the 2026 season, I think, is honestly a Big Ten title for the Terps. I think that's the ceiling for this team. And when I say ceiling, I mean the best possible situation. And I don't think everyone's ceiling in the country is their conference championship or a playoff appearance. I don't think that. But I honestly think when you go down the team that Maryland football has, combined with the schedule, combined with some of the new ads we have in the coaching staff, I think Maryland's ceiling as a team this year is honestly a Big Ten championship. Like, I think that's possible. I think that's something that could end up happening for Maryland football. I honestly think it's something that is actually feasible. I know that I'm saying it's their ceiling. I'm not saying it's their floor. I'm not saying that's what's going to end up happening. Like, are we probably going to win the Big Ten championship? No. But I do think for Maryland football, the ceiling is a Big Ten title. I really do believe that. And I think a lot of that conversation starts with the quarterback, Malik Washington. If you're going to be in the Big Ten championship, if you're going to be playing late and be one of the important teams in the Big Ten, I think a lot of the reason why is going to be your quarterback. And I think Malik Washington can be as good as anybody in the conference. And that's why I'm talking about ceiling. When I talk about the ceiling with Malik Washington, I legitimately think it's up there with Julian Sayin. I think it's up there with Bryce Underwood. I think it's up there with Tre Moore or the kid from Washington, whoever you want to put up there. I think it's up there with them for the Terps. I think Malik Washington has that type of ceiling where he has the potential and the tools, I think, to have one of the best years in the entire country and one of the best years in the Big Ten. I think that highly of Malik Washington. And when your quarterback has those types of tools, your ceiling gets drastically higher. I think he's up there with those guys, Dante, Julian Sayin, whoever you want to put up there. I think in terms of his pure talent, in terms of what he can become, and we talk about it, freshman to sophomore leaps are usually some of the biggest leaps you'll make in your entire sports career, whether that's high school, whether that's college, whether that's NFL, and you're going from your rookie to your second year, college, your freshman to your sophomore year, same thing in high school. That's usually a really big jump. And I think Malik Washington has the talent. There's not really necessarily a weakness in his game. I know he worked on things this offseason, but I do think he has the potential possibly to become one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And if we have one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, you're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. Now, that's not it, but you're going to have a really good chance at winning a lot of games. And I do like Malik Washington. I like him as a quarterback, and I think he drastically improves our potential as a program. I think also another part of this that I think Maryland has the ceiling to be able to win the Big Ten. I really do believe this again. I think you got to look at the schedule. When you look at the schedule for Maryland football, it's manageable. It is. It is very manageable. I think a lot of people kind of thought the schedule is better than it actually is when you really look at it. And when you're usually going to be in the Big Ten title or right there, when we talk about the ceiling, you usually, in terms of your schedule and your ceiling, you usually can only afford to lose one game. I don't think you can really end up losing two. And I think Maryland's schedule makes for potential. Again, Malik Washington has to be really good. We'll talk about some of the other facets of the football team that has to be really good. But I think Maryland's schedule allows them potentially to win a lot of Big Ten games. I do. You start off with UCLA. If Maryland is as good as I think they are, they can beat UCLA. Then Nebraska, same thing with Nebraska. Ohio State, that's a tricky one. That might be where the loss is coming. But Ohio State isn't as good as they've been. I really do believe that. I don't think that they are as talented. They lost a lot of guys. I know they have Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sane, but they lost a lot on their defense. I think that's someone that I'm not saying we win, but I'll say that's our loss. Rutgers, I think you could, if Maryland's where we want them to be, that could be a win. Illinois could be a win. Purdue could be a win. Wisconsin could be a win. And now there's a tricky 2-game stretch down the end. But we're talking about Maryland ceiling. We're saying if everything's firing, if Malik Washington looks like one of the best guys in the Big Ten and Maryland's overall team looks elite, you get a USC team that hasn't been great yet in the Big Ten, hasn't played up to their potential, a team that we beat 2 years ago when we won one Big Ten game. Like, you can't tell me that we can't beat them. We beat them with Billy Edwards when that was our only Big Ten win. We can beat USC. I think there's a chance. And Penn State, I don't know what they're going to be. This isn't the same Penn State team that we're used to. We're not positive this team is going to be good, to be completely honest, in their first year with their new coach. We don't know what Penn State's going to be. And so that's another team that you look at and you're like, shoot, Penn State a down year. USC we beat when we were a lot worse. Ohio State's the one loss where I'm looking at where I'm like, yeah, that'll probably not be a win. And I'm not saying that we'll beat Penn State. I'm not saying that we'll beat some of these teams. I'm talking about Maryland's ceiling. And so when I think about the quarterback, when I think about the schedule, and then I think about the sophomore talent and the talent in general just coming back. We picked up a bunch of guys on the interior defensive line. We should be able to stop the run. We should have one of the best pass rush, one of the best pass rushing rooms in the entire Big Ten. When you talk about with Zion Ely coming in, but the two freshmen All-Americans and Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis, you bring in Clint Trickett as an offensive coordinator who understands the offensive schemes. We should be much improved, a much more balanced team. You bring back 3 starters on the offensive line with a bunch of other guys that played on the offensive line that have experience. That room should be better as well. You bring back your entire linebacking core that you have 3 guys that are all really talented and arguably your best player last year. Like, there's potential on this Maryland team to do some damage, I think. And I think we're going to be underrated heading into next year. And we're a team that could be a lot better than what people think. There are concerns, but we're talking about the ceiling. And if things click for this Maryland football team, I think you could be looking at a team whose ceiling is a Big Ten title. That's the best possible case scenario. Now, I think they can land a little bit below that. Like I talked about in one of the other episodes, I was like a 10-win team. I think is very feasible, very possible. A 9-win team, a bowl team. But I do think when we talk about the ceiling and what they possibly become and the tools that they have on this football team, it could be up there with a lot of different people in the Big Ten. And so don't be surprised. I really do think the combination of the schedule, I really like our new offensive coordinator. I think he has a holistic, better, balanced approach. And also you can talk about Mike Loxley coaching to potentially keep his job. So there's something there as well. So I do think there's some potential there for Maryland. So let me know what you guys think down below. But I think the ceiling reminder can be possibly the Big Ten championship. Let's talk a little bit more about Maryland basketball. They have 3 offseason keys that I think are going to be extremely important heading into the offseason for Maryland football. We'll talk about that next. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip offs to late nights, West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into an even bigger potential win with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. You can mix spreads, totals, player props to match how you see the slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold, ride with your team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, and now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Coast Play is giving Locked On College listeners up to 2,000 credit for your business when you get started today. If you manage a crew, construction, HVAC, landscaping, any operation with trucks on the road, you already know how messy gas and material spendings can get. Cards get shared, receipts disappear, and month ends turn into a headache. Coast Play fixes all of that. Coast Play is a modern fuel card and an expense management tool built specifically for fleets, fuel maintenance, materials, all on one card with real control and instant visibility. Every transaction shows up the moment it happens. No surprises. If someone fuels up and on time or tries to buy something outside their limit, you'll know instantly. Real time alerts so you know who's spending and what and where. Automatic receipts catcher that makes months end simple. It's built for operators who don't have time to chase paperwork. And unlike fuel old cards, there are no contracts or commitments, just smarter expense control. And right now, CoastPay is offering our listeners up to 2,000 credit when you get started at coastplay.com/lockedoncollege. Go to coastplay.com/lockedoncollege to see how you can earn up to 2,000 credit. Terms apply. The Coast Visa commercial credit is issued by Celtic Bank. All card accounts are subject to credit approval. So I have three big keys heading into the offseason for Maryland basketball. And in one of the most disappointing years we've seen Maryland basketball have. It was pretty bad. It was pretty terrible. I don't really want to see what I saw ever again. One of the worst Big Ten, or the worst Big Ten season we've had in the basketball conference. We were sandwiched between two football schools who have the football season to be really excited about. But hey, I just told you guys we got some things to be excited about this football season as well. And so I don't really ever want to see that again from Maryland. But I do think there's some potential for Maryland basketball this offseason, but there's a couple different keys that I think are going to be really important. In no particular order, because I'm still trying to figure out how important each one is, to be completely honest. To start, my number one key is something that I read a little bit about to get a better understanding before this podcast. It's Pharrell Payne. Pharrell Payne is trying to get another year back, and he's a really big offseason key. Can't stress this enough. If Pharrell Payne comes back, I think Maryland has a lot of momentum coming into next year. I do. And he's arguably the number one key this offseason. If he comes back, I love kind of where Maryland's at, and I love kind of their potential and what they possibly could become next season with Pharrell Payne, a legitimate star to add into the mix. I think he's a number one, or one of the top topics this offseason. And he's the best potential player that we can get. It's going to be hard to get a better guy in the portal. It's going to be hard to get one of the freshmen playing better than what he can play, or some of the other guys that potentially could return coming back playing like he can. And he's seeking another year. There's some rule. It's like you have to play under 30% of the games, and like the NCAA has to approve it, and it has to be proof of medical and things like that. Like, I'm not too worried about that stuff. That's obviously not my job. All I know is there's a chance he comes back. There's a chance he doesn't. There's a chance he has to go into the next level. There's a chance he ends up in the portal and ends up going somewhere else for his last year. I think that could be possible, because I think he'd get a lot of money to go somewhere else, and that might be what makes the most sense. But, I don't know exactly what happens, but I think he's one of the biggest keys to the offseason. I think if we want to start with some momentum, if we want to start firing and feeling good about ourselves, it's about getting that guy back on the basketball team. I think the second part that I think is going to be really big for Maryland football and an offseason key is getting these freshmen ready. I don't think our freshmen this year were necessarily like ready to play. I know it was kind of all late and all over the place with getting Darius Adams late and getting Alex Austin's late and different things like that. Del Pino, but I think these freshmen we're going to need to come in and to be ready. And so we need them to be physically ready because I didn't know if Darius Adams was ever physically ready. I think that's why he needs another offseason in the weight room and things like that, because I think he can just get stronger, get a little bit more explosive, things like that. I think it can help his game a lot. Similar with Alex Austin. I think he's kind of skinny, to be honest. Like, I think he needs to get a little stronger. I don't want to see that with House. I don't want to see that with Baba, our 5-star talent, 4-star talent that we have in that class. They need to come in physically ready to go next year. And so that means getting the freshman class in here, getting them ready. And I know they come early for like the summer or whatever the case is, and they start playing pretty early. We got to get those guys in the gym. We got to get those guys stronger because that class, I've talked about it, is going to be a huge indicator of what Maryland basketball is over the next year or 2 or 3, depending on what kind of happens with all of them. And so we got to get those guys ready to go. We got to get those guys firing on all cylinders. And so I think that's something that is another part of this key to the offseason. There's a bunch of keys, but I think these are my top 3 keys. And then my next one is the freshman question mark, but not the freshman in terms of the ones I just talked about. The freshmen that just played. In particular, I'm talking about 2 guys, Andre Mills and Darius Adams. You guys have heard me talk about it. I've talked about it a lot. It's different than Pharrell Payne. I think it's different than Pharrell Payne returning, and that's why I don't want to just say people returning. I think Pharrell Payne is its own situation, but we can also talk about it still as a kind of a holistic view on it. And this is my thing with Andre Mills and Darius Adams. I think Andre Mills already made a jump in season, proving that he can be really good in the Big Ten. Like, I think he's proved that. And so I think getting him back could potentially be huge for Maryland basketball. And then Darius Adams, I think, can make a huge jump. Like, I think he could average 15 a game next year. And those are 2 guys I think could be like 15, 14 point per game guys next year that you're going to need back if you want to feel better about yourself heading into the next season. You're going to need those guys back. And I think that's extremely important for Maryland. And so we'll see what ends up happening. But I do think that it's a really big deal getting those couple of guys back. With Pharrell Payne, you could be cooking with some stuff. So I think those are the 3 keys. We'll talk about them a ton, but those are kind of the keys to me for Maryland basketball. Let's talk about the freshman class, the 2026 class, not Zion Ely, not Daryl Carey, guys behind that could come in and make an impact. We'll talk about that next. If you've been thinking about joining the Everydayer Club, now is the time. Again, you get ad-free shows and access to our group chat on Discord. And if you're signed up before the NCAA tournament tips off, you can get into our Everydayer Club bracket pool on Discord for a chance to win Locked On merch. It should be a ton of fun. And right now, you can use code MARCH to get your first month free. I have a URL down low, a link that you guys can click on. It's right in the show description. You guys will see it. I have it labeled very clearly. It helps us all out. So make sure you guys go ahead, click on that link, and get signed up. You guys won't regret it at all. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for Sponsor Job. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your posts. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. We need the right person to cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There's something for everyone. The flavor that I think I would pick number one is something that I've liked since I've been a kid. It has to be the Cotton Candy. But there's also all the other great ones, like I mentioned, and so many different more. And 5-Hour Energy Shots gives you a boost with zero sugar. 5-Hour Energy has a lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned, so there's so many different flavors to choose from, like I said. So you guys have to find your new favorite flavor on the 5-Hour Energy Shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. So I want to talk a little bit about Maryland football and some guys that I think could potentially actually end up playing for Maryland football in the 2026 class that we haven't really talked about, because I think we talked about Zion Ely. I talked about Daryl Carey, both guys that I think could be good, but there's a couple guys behind them that I think could end up actually kind of being part of what Maryland football actually does next year. And I actually wanted to focus on the receiver room when it came to this, because I think when you think about Maryland football right now, we're thinking about receivers right now as guys that could come in and play. Excuse me, guys. I feel like I always have to sneeze during these things. But a couple of guys that I'm potentially looking at that I'm excited about for Maryland football receiving room. There's a guy in the receiving room called Josiah Teasley, who we brought in, who's committed. Could be a really interesting player, to be honest. 6'5" receiver. We'll see if he can move the right way to be able to kind of play. But with that height, you got to look at him as someone that potentially could cause some damage in the receiving room. Like I said, we're weak at receiver right now, and this kid's got a little bit of a burst when you watch him on film. He's also not playing the best kids ever, which doesn't help, but this kid could be a playmaker for Maryland football. I honestly believe that. I just think his size just allows him to kind of be a threat, and he's a pretty fast kid. And so I think he's a guy in the receiving room. Remember, receiving room's a little weak. I don't know what to think of it. I don't know who's going to step up. I don't know how good the transfers are going to be. I don't know how good the returners are going to be. We lose our top three guys in that room, and so we don't know who's going to step up. So there is actually room for some of these freshmen to play, and I think he's number one on the list of guys that potentially could play. 6'5", receiver, 190 pounds. If he gets a little stronger, you could be looking at him as someone that gets some tick for Maryland football. I think there is a world where that ends up happening. And a similar conversation, another kid that's a pretty tall player is Jaden Kitchens. He could be another guy that's honestly interesting. Both guys are from Virginia, but another guy that could be interesting, 6'2" and a half, is ranked as a 3-star as well. And so remember, we've done a really good job of getting some of these lower, or not lower level, but 3-star recruits at the receiver position and making them into something. Like, we've done a pretty good job with that. And I think this is potentially another one. Both of those guys are two guys that potentially could be two that could end up actually working out for Maryland football and end up being really solid player. And so when you look at some of his scouting report, I always like to kind of see what people are saying. Gabe Brooks, 247, wrote a little bit about his scouting report. Jaden Kitchens, the 6'3" wide receiver, he says he is a tall pass catcher with the physical tools of a traditional outside receiver, but a lot of snaps from the slot. Shows comfort working multiple levels in the middle of the field, capable of stretching the field vertically as a seam buster or down the boundaries. Effective run after catch, strong athletic profile. Somewhat of a one-speed player, can play some gear shifting nuance to enhance elusiveness. So, bona fide power four caliber receiver who could provide valuable alignment, variety, and a lot. And so he looks like a pretty good player, to be completely honest. And I think both of those guys could potentially be guys that we look at down the road or this year, like this year in the receiving room, that we're like, dang, we kind of need you guys to play. To be completely honest. And so I think there's a world where that ends up happening just based off of where we're at as a team. So look out for Jaden Kitchens and Josiah Teasley, two guys that could get on the field early for Maryland football. And I don't know exactly how good they're going to be, but they could surprise us as early guys. And I think as we figure out the receiving room, I do think there's players there before they get on. But if they're that talented, you have to play them. You have no other option. And so I'll be curious to see what ends up happening there. That's all we have for today. I want to remind you guys to please sign up for the Everydayer Club. Again, it's the link down below in the show notes. You guys can find it. It's very clearly labeled. You get a chance to win merch. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you guys get on that. But thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys all like and subscribe. We're here literally every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.